He's taken Shador Sanders, this is the ideal selection for Vegas. And I'm sending bouquets of poker chips to Tennessee and New York for passing on the obvious QB here. And I'm taking this guy because, again, reminds me so much of Joe Burrow. I don't care what Pete says. I like this fit for the Raiders.
For the glorious episode of the Signal Caller. I'm your host, Dwayne Douglas, along with Solo Lopez. PORSBR is my Twitter handle, and his is the Solo Lopez. So check him out there. Also, I gotta scroll up and read it now because it's so long. But PORSBR.bsky.social is on Blue Sky. So check me out there, and then on Instagram, put on waivers underscore podcast is another spot. So the Raiders, the draft is upon us here, coming up soon, and then this past weekend we had the combine. So the Raiders, I think one thing is clear about the combine that I want to make sure that everybody knows is that, like, if we having a bad combine performance is I don't think is the end of the world for people. Some people think it is. For a quarterback, especially, I'm like, if you played well on the field, I think that kind of supersedes it. Then when they're taking the quarterback like a Will Howard. He takes the risk. He does not have to do it. He takes the risk and does it. He has some errant passes. So he has some errant passes where he's throwing the guys he doesn't know. But if you want guys to participate in this thing, we gotta just see it, take it, and then not be the end of the world. Now, if somebody is every deep ball is being underthrown or whatever, to me is I'm not gonna throw a player in the trash because he had a bad combine. I think obviously the grass is more important.
Yeah. I think when you correlate that with someone who might have bad tape as well, then it becomes an issue where you have a poor performance on top of the guy who has bad tape on the field when he played. Like, for instance, Patriots fans were desperate to push the Joe Milton, let's get a trade pick for Joe Milton thing. It's like, okay, but he wasn't that great, and the Bills are playing third stringers, and he didn't have a good combine last year, and you paired that with his tape that wasn't very good either. And it's like, I just don't think the guy's a very good quarterback. And we talked about this last offseason about him. And so nothing he's really done in that half a game that he played doesn't really tell me that he's going to be, that our observations and our perspectives are wrong. But in terms of a guy like Will Howard, who, he had some errant passes, he had some errant routines that weren't necessarily good. You can make the argument that, hey, okay, so he is not familiar with receivers, and playing pitch and catch is actually not as easy as it sounds when you're in that type of setting and that kind of pressure when all the cameras are on you with brand new guys and you're just expected to go out there and make pinpoint accuracy throws. Some guys do it, some guys don't. Manziel had one of the best pro days we've ever seen. It just things like that when you're in that kind of setting, sometimes it's just not good, sometimes it is. But Will Howard looks a lot better, obviously, on tape and on film, and in that system, first of all, in multiple systems, really. That were able to allow him to be impactful and effective and efficient in an offense like that. And granted, he had awesome guys to throw to. He had an awesome team and he was insulated. So you run into the Mac Jones argument. You run into but he had a really good team argument. Yeah, sure. But you still have to execute to the best of your ability. And you still have to make the evaluation, albeit with a grain of salt when he has guys like that.
Yeah. Listen, man, I really, there were enough. They called a shot play in the most critical moment in that national championship game, and he put it right in the receiver's chest. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's just and the whole insulated with good players. Like, I mean, to me is I don't know how people punish players punish a quarterback for having good players.
Yeah.
Like I mean, like it makes to me, that whole argument makes no sense. It's just sound. It's
It's the
just
Brock Purdy argument. It's the anti-Brock Purdy argument. It really is. It's like this guy is just don't pay this guy. You cannot pay this guy. It's like, well, Tua's making $250 million, bro. Like Trevor Lawrence is making $260 million. Like you're telling me those guys can pay those guys without any effective playoff
you
performances, but
can't
you can't
tell
pay
me.
Brock?
100%, and you can't tell me. And I'm not a Purdy guy, but like you can't tell me he's
I'm
not
not
better.
either. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't tell me he's not better than he's not better than Tua.
Yeah. He,
Yes, yeah,
there's
seriously,
no,
yeah,
there's just, like he's better than those two guys. He just is.
yeah.
And
No
you have
question.
to play the market game. You have to play the market game. And it's unfortunate where he was drafted that you have to pay him earlier than you would if he's a first rounder. But you're a lot happier with Brock Purdy right now than you were with Jimmy Garoppolo. I promise you that. I
Yeah, no question.
promise you are happier than with Jimmy Garoppolo or man, I can't even remember his name now. The guy that now plays for Dallas. Third overall pick that they traded up for.
Oh, Trey
That's how
Trey
not memorable he is. I can't even remember
Trey
his name.
Trey Day.
Yeah, Trey Lance.
That's what
God,
it
that's
is.
crazy. There,
That's crazy.
I'm a draft guy, and I can't believe like that's how non-memorable that guy's career was. Like, you're a lot happier at Brock Purdy than those guys, and Brock Purdy is leading you to places on a consistent basis. You know,
But to the Niners' credit, they Trey Lance failed. They pivoted, and
100%.
they took multiple quarterbacks, and they found another one later on. So this is what this is when Raider fans say don't take a quarterback. Yes, Trey Lance failed, but you guess what happened? They found another quarterback because they took another quarterback there with Brock Purdy. And say what you want about Brock Purdy, he was an inch away from winning a Super Bowl. So a play away from winning a Super Bowl. Well, probably a Kyle Shanahan play call away from winning a Super Bowl because the defense. Shout out to Steve Wilkes forever on this show. Held a really good Chiefs team to 19 points in 4 quarters.
It's just a shame they couldn't fire Steve Wilkes again this year because they would have saved their season if they had. So
yes, yes. Well, you know how they do. You know how they do. I thought, going into, I mean, Ward didn't participate, Sanders didn't participate. We knew that was going to happen. I do think, I like the courage of of Will Howard just showing up and doing it. And then Jackson Dart, he had the opposite effect. He played he threw the ball very well. And everybody was, kind of just so, hey, is he quarterback 2? Is he this and that? I mean, listen, I am at this point and people are going to probably kill me for it. And like I said, I don't really care. But at this point, if the only quarterback there was at 6, I mean, at that point, and it's Jackson Dart, I think I kind of would rather take Dart, not give up assets, and then just focus on the rest of the draft after that. Get my 2 running backs, get some edge, get a safety, get a linebacker. That way, like if I'm trying to trade up, I'm giving away next year's draft. I'm giving away other stuff like that rather than I'd rather just take the hit from the 6th position because this is a good draft. This is not all time great, physical prospect, Calvin Johnson type prospects in this draft.
Yeah. This is I think 2012, it feels like type of draft where, like Eric Parker and Luke Jokel was going 2 and, the Raiders traded the 3rd overall pick back to 12 and the Miami moved up to take like Dion Jordan, I think is who they took out of Oregon. It's like there are guys that are really good. And then there are drafts that are really good, and then there are drafts that are not so good, and teams are going to have to make a lot of risky decisions in that situation. This could be it. In terms of the Jackson Dart stuff, even if you get a Jackson Dart and you get him at 6, which is a reach in my opinion. Like if I had a 1st-round grade on Cam Ward, I had a 1st-round grade on Shedeur Sanders. I didn't have a 1st-round grade coming into this draft, this combine on Jackson Dart. I'm still not quite there. But I would not be shocked if he does. But the idea that if you get a guy that is really good with a really good team and not so good with not a great team, like if he's like, I don't want to say the boogeyman words, but if he's Derek Carr premium, basically, where he can make plays and be good on a really good team, and then he might not be able to shoulder the entire load at times. I understand that impact of that type of position, that type of player is a lot greater than it would be if you get Brock Bowers. And I know that's blasphemous, and I get it, but it's like the Raiders won 4 games last year, and the Broncos won 10, and we're in the playoffs. The difference in that is that the Raiders have Brock Bowers, who's a generational tight end. He's great. I get it. But you don't have the impact of the game's most important position. And whether you believe it or not, Bo Nix was really good last year and really good in stretches, and he helped lead them back to the playoffs. It's just you can't throw 29 touchdowns as a rookie and be like, okay, well, I didn't really do anything. It's the defense that helped me out do this. It's like, can you name me like 3 of his pass catchers? I can't. Like, and I do this for a living. Like, I can't name 3 or 4 of his pass rusher or of his pass catchers. Like, I can't name the tight end that he was using last year. Like, I was a big Greg Dulcich fan at the beginning of the year. I've been a Dulcich fan for 3 years. He wasn't even on the team. He was on the Giants halfway through the year. So it's like the impact of that position is so great that if you reach on a quarterback like that, he ends up being good and he ends up being a 15 to 45 round like pick talent at quarterback. The impact of that is always going to be greater because of the league that they play in, the league that he plays in. The impact of that player is always, always, always going to be greater than a generational defensive end or a generational tight end. It's just fact. J.J. Watt had arguably the greatest season we've ever seen from a defensive player when he was catching touchdowns on offense and he had 20 sacks and he was defensive player of the year and they won 9 games that year and won their division. Sure. But that's it. That's what you got out of that. And he's a first ballot Hall of Famer and he's a 3-time defensive player of the year. It's like, because you don't have a quarterback. And it's just that much more important for the impact of a good quarterback or even an above average quarterback than any other position. So if he's there at 6 and they take him, it would not be my first choice at that point. But at the same time, if you got to do it, you got to do it at that point to try to lock up that position. If they believe in it, I'm going to be behind them and try to hope for the best.
And then when you think about it too, if you look at like if you look at like Tankathon or just like the teams who are after the Raiders, you got the Jets sitting there, you have the Saints sitting there, you have the possibly the Colts sitting there, you have Seattle sitting there, you have all these teams like this idea like
Pittsburgh at what 21 or 22.
You got Pittsburgh. I mean the Chargers might just say, hey, you know what? At some point we gotta do it. Why not? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have all the you do have teams here who could possibly take him. And I just don't feel like he gets to the second round. I could be that because listen, I could be dead wrong, but quarterback is the most overdrafted position in the league. A guy who is ranked as the 30th best player might go in the top 10 because he's a quarterback, and rightfully so, because that position has so much influence on the game. And so if they took him. I would rather just they have 10 picks. That'd be 9 opportunities to go get everything else. So am I going to be? I mean, some people am I going to be crying because I missed on Will Johnson? If Will Johnson's an all-time, if Will Johnson's a good player, a good corner, if he's an all-time great, then I missed it. Then I'll just relook at my evaluation and think, okay, well, how did I miss that? Same thing with with the tight end out. With the tackle Campbell out of LSU.
Campbell.
Yeah, good player, ran a really good 40. I don't know if he's an all-time. Is he going to be a star? I mean, they're already talking about moving him inside already. So maybe because of his arm length. So. Hey, I would jump on it, but I mean, we've been kind of on this bus for a long time. I think the Raiders might actually get, if they don't sign Rodgers, which I don't think they will, and they sign Wilson, I think it sounds like Darnold is going to go back to Minnesota. They're trying to work on a good deal. I think he's going to be in a situation where he wants to be. He's in a situation where he knows that offense. He can trust that guy to make a to have a good season with the Vikings, opposed to going to a Raiders team where things are in flux. You have a good coach in Pete Carroll, but until you see it, you gotta have proof of concept, right? With the Raiders. So I think he'll take less money to go there. I think so. They're going to be backed into the corner that we want to see them backed into, where they have to draft a quarterback.
Yeah. Yeah. After going through last year and the year before and the year before and the year before, I think that enough is enough. Like, how many times can you just kick this can down the road and be like, well, Rodgers is the guy, or Stafford is the guy, or all, it's like at some point these guys are not the guys, and you have to draft the guy, and you have to get the guy that you can put the keys into and build that. And someone tried to come at me this week on Twitter and be like, well, like Carroll is looking to win now and he's 74. I was like, I don't care. Like, I don't care about that. They chose to bring in a 74-year-old coach. That doesn't change the projection and the trajectory of what the Raiders have to do long term. You don't need a short-term guy just because you have a short-term coach. Like, that's an absurd way to think about team building. Like, you just and we're broken records, but it's the same thing every year. And the Raiders are in the same position every year because they refuse to do it. So I'm hoping that it's not all bluster and talk with Spytek, and that they actually do go get a quarterback. And I can understand people wanting to say, well, let's just wait till next year and all that, but it's just not a good argument. There's no valid reason to wait until next year to get a guy. If you guy's right there and you believe that he has an impact enough to be a first round talent, you got to get him. You got to put the keys in his hands. Because at first you're pivoting in 2.5 years and you're making a new decision anyway. You're gonna have to keep drafting quarterbacks. Like, just even if you find a franchise quarterback, 10 years, 12 years down the road, you're still gonna have to draft more. This is not the last guy you'll ever have. So you have to get into the routine of drafting these guys on a regular basis if you don't have one.
No question about it. I mean, if the Patriots could keep drafting quarterbacks after Tom Brady, I don't know. I'm not sure why the Raiders. Other teams couldn't do that as well. A quick trade that I thought was interesting, really quickly, was I was just flashed on Twitter, and a fan. Let me give this fan credit. Who's his name? Brad Morrison. Brad Morris. No, Brad Morrison. Lax Brad 925 said the Raiders should just call the Niners since they're shopping Michael Mayer. Michael Mayer straight up for Jordan Mason.
Oh, that's not bad.
That's not bad.
I saw the Mayer for Charbonnet thing. I like that much more. Charbonnet is nice, real nice.
Hey, listen.
One of the few
Bruins I like. Zach Charbonnet. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense.
I think you could get more than Mason out of that. I think you could get more of a talented player than Mason. I like Mason, but he's also he's 26. I think he's going to be 26 next year, or close to it. And he'd been hurt. He couldn't handle the load. He got hurt. Halfway through the year.
I'm not. But you know how we build teams. You and I build teams. We're not asking them to carry the load over here. We're drafting 2 running backs. So we're cleaning house of the other running backs, and we're drafting 2.
I don't mind that at all. It'd be interesting if to see what the Niners are thinking on Christian McCaffrey, just to see what they're thinking on, because I think a year from now, I think he's going to be cheap on the real cheap. I think that they're going to give him one more year to try to see if they can squeeze the most out of him because of his contract. But I think McCaffrey is either 1 year too early right now, or he's all the way done, and we'll find out next year.
So if this site, somebody relayed this site to me. So this site is correct. It gives the combine visits that the Raiders had. Did you want to hear their names?
Yeah.
So we got Cam Ward, we got Shedeur Sanders, Mason Graham, Ted McMillan, Will Johnson, Micaiah Starks, Michael, Mike. I call him Mike Green. Mike Green and Buka, Barron, Josh Connolly. Let's see here. Benjamin Morrison, Siobhan Ravel Jr. Let's see. The linebacker from Carson, the linebacker from UCLA. Can't say his last name. I always forget his last name. Jackson Dart, Xavier Watts, Junkins, JT, from Ohio State. Trey Amos from Ole Miss, you got Noel, the wide receiver from Iowa State, Henderson, the
Noel.
Trayvon Henderson,
Mm.
Swinson from the edge from LSU. We got Castro from Iowa, safety. Josiah Stewart, Tez Johnson, Kobe Bryant, Kobe. Quinn Ewers. We got Kyle McCord. We have Will Howard. We have Danny Sunsman. Um, Cody Simon, who I love that. Okay. Charles Grant, Makai Moore, and then you got Jackson Woodard, a linebacker. It is nice to see like you have you kind of feel like a little validation when you see like people who they brought in to talk to who were were also in your mock drafts, and not the top guys, but like the Kobe Bryants, the
Yeah.
guys like Mike Green, who I've had in mock drafts. I've had obviously Jackson Dart, and then I had one of the guys here, Kyle McCord later on, and I had Cody Simon. Cody Simon, linebacker, a later round pick, but I do like what I saw from him at Ohio State. Any thoughts?
So yeah, I am actually paying attention to the running backs they didn't bring in for because I always like to try to find the group and the guy that the team's trying to be sneaky with that doesn't bring him in for a visit, doesn't really pay attention to him, doesn't talk about him at all.
Mm-hmm.
I think Dylan Sampson is a guy that's going to end up being like really, really looked at for the Raiders. And if they, I don't think they met with him. That's the running back from Tennessee. Ran well. Had a good season last year. Is one of these 9 to 11 guys that look like NFL ready players, like NFL ready running backs. Coming out explosive, really good. I think he's got good hands. I think he showcased his agility. I think he showcased some really good fundamental balance that he's going to need in order to play the position well. He's obviously a good player that's coming out. So I'm that's a guy that I'm going to watch here for like really intently over the next because I was listening to the names. I was like, okay, so I didn't hear Ollie Gordon, I didn't hear Devin Neal, I didn't hear Dylan Sampson. I'm like, okay, I like these guys a lot. So it could be one of those guys out of the position that the Raiders like. We get the call and he's like, you guys didn't even talk to me, or he
Yeah.
with the interview. I didn't even talk to the Raiders at all. They didn't even say a word to me. It turns out they love me and they wanted to draft me on the team. So that I think one of the Ohio State running backs becomes a Raider, and I wouldn't be shocked if Dylan Sampson joins them.
Yeah, should be it's cool stuff there. But I mean, yeah, that is it's some interesting names there. I do think that one of the names too. I do like the small school guys too. They had one small school guy, Charles Grant from William and Mary.
Mm.
So they had him there as well too. They did have. I think there's a guy named Jay Cooper who might be happy that they have linebackers on this list. Because he's been crying for linebackers ever since we have known him for the Raiders to get to improve. He wants a linebacker so bad with the Raiders. All right, folks.
We should emphasize our linebacker in the top 3 rounds, not just a linebacker. He wants a premium pick used on a linebacker. So bless him.
Yeah, he doesn't want Ben Heaney. He doesn't want Ben Heaney.
No, he doesn't. Yeah. He does not want Ben Heaney or a team next door. He doesn't want those guys.
Yeah, no question about it. All right, folks. We'll see you next time.